Thankfully, no such restrictions in India yet. India is still in the midst of a digital boom. India has some of the world's most affordable internet plans, and there is a growing demand for devices, for laptops and tablets of all sizes. But New Delhi has issued a new order today, and it may have a bearing on your next purchase. India has imposed an import restriction on devices like laptops. Companies that sell these gadgets will have to get a license to import. To some, it may hark back to the infamous license Raj. Our next report tells you what this move is all about.
If you've ever tried to buy a laptop, your search for the perfect device might follow a series of predictable steps. You probably begin with a Google search and type in words like best laptops under 50,000. The gurus at Google throw up a long list of names. There are photographs and a long list of specs, filled with tech jargon that honestly even an Oxford dictionary cannot explain. Once you have spent enough time perusing all the advice online, the entire product catalogue is a blur. The configurations don't make sense anymore. What you're left with are just names like HP, Dell, Samsung, and Apple. Your choice probably hinges on the brand. Have you ever wondered why there are no Indian names among the top brands? Probably because there are not enough laptops made in India. That's true for personal computers and tablets too. India wants to fix that problem. It has come up with new rules, a new licensing requirement for companies to follow. Until now, such devices could have been imported freely. There were no requirements as such. But that's about to change. Now, manufacturers would need a license to get their products to India. Why make the process harder? The intention is to get these companies to make in India. That isn't really happening right now. From April to June this year, almost $20 billion worth of electronics were imported to India. This includes laptops, tablets, and personal computers. These devices make up almost 1.5% of India's total imports in a year. Nearly half of this supply comes from China right now. New Delhi wants to change that. There are now incentives on offer. Earlier this year, India announced a $2.1 billion scheme. How does it work? If the manufacturers make in India and exceed an annual target, they'll be entitled to a cashback on the goods that leave the factory. There will be a ripple effect on the economy too. New Delhi expects the scheme will generate about 200,000 jobs. 75,000 will be direct, the rest will be indirect. Why make such a push now? India is trying to capitalize on its past success. Earlier, New Delhi had introduced a similar production scheme for smartphones. Tech giants like Apple capitalized on them. 7% of all iPhones produced in the world now carry the Made in India tag. New Delhi wants to capitalize on this success. The goal is ambitious, but there are apprehensions. Industry officials say the new license requirement might affect their ability to offer new products quickly. Indians may need to wait longer to get their hands on new models after launch. Further, the new requirement might dampen the festive spirit. The restrictions come just before the festive season, the time when companies plan attractive offers to woo buyers. They'll now need to come up with a new plan, probably one that might need to manufacture in India.
Earlier we spoke about setting the limit, about drawing red lines. Well, China has drawn another one. It cuts right through the middle of civil liberties and choice. Let me explain. China's cyber regulator has come out with some suggestions. They're telling teens how to use smartphones. If you're aged between 16 and 18, you can use a smartphone for 2 hours a day. Between 8 and 16, 1 hour a day, and below 8, just 8 minutes. I'll repeat that. Just 8 minutes of screen time if you're below 8 years of age in China. There are internet curbs too. No mobile internet from 10 p.m. at night to 6 a.m., obviously in the morning. On paper, this is supposed to be a choice. Parents may or may not enforce it. They say it's a choice, but we all know how choice works in China. So tech companies are feeling the heat already. Their shares plunged on Wednesday and Thursday. Alibaba was down more than 2%, Tencent almost 0.5% down. The question is, why is China doing this? because children are spending too much time on their phones. Eye problems are on the rise, so is internet and phone addiction. So what does Beijing do? Impose hard limits on how much they can use it. Beijing has done this before. In 2021, remember, they curbed online gaming. They said teen gamers can only play for 3 hours a week. But do these hard limits really work? We'll answer that question. But first, let's understand the problem. Screen time is a major issue among teenagers. Doctors say the ideal limit is 2 hours a day. And how much time do teens actually spend? A lot more than 2 hours. In the US, around 7.5 hours per day. In India, around 7.3 hours every day. That's the kind of screen time they have. More than 60% of Indian children have more than 2 hours of screen time. This leads to all kinds of problems, like irregular sleep, mood swings, excessive snacking, and fatigue. So the bottom line is this: it is not desirable. Children should not be spending 7 hours on the phone in a day. And it's not like they're watching quality content. Most often it's games or reels. So China's objective is good. But what about their method? Do other countries have similar strategies? Very few of them do. For example, Taiwan does. Parents there are legally obliged to limit teenage screen time. No hard limits though. It just says, quote unquote, not beyond a reasonable time. And if parents ignore this, they can be fined. How much? Up to $1,600. That should be enough incentive, I guess. Taiwan has also banned gadgets for children below 2 years of age. It's illegal to use them. South Korea is another example. They have limited children's access to online games. Between midnight and 6 a.m., children cannot play online. But do these curbs work? For starters, imposing them is a nightmare. More than 20% of China's population is under the age of 18. How do you regulate all of them? Ask parents to take away their phones? Or tweak the software to limit screen time? Neither method is ideal. Tech companies say it's nearly impossible. Parents and children will always find loopholes. But that's just one part of the problem. The second is the concept of it. Should governments be asking children what and how much to watch? It's a slippery slope. By that logic, shouldn't cigarettes and alcohols also be banned? Banning or curbing isn't always the answer. In fact, it can be counterproductive. Children may grow to resent their parents or consider themselves untrustworthy of devices. You don't want that happening. A better solution would be parent-driven. Parents know what is best for their kids. What they need is good advice and plans, not legally enforceable ones, just good old tips. After that, it's all about your creativity. And I know it's hard to make children listen. But that applies to everything, really, not just screen time. It's not like children love eating green vegetables or finish homework on time or sleep when you ask them to. You need to figure out a way to make them do these things. And screen time is no different. The state's job is not to interfere in parenting. The state's job is to tell parents what is desirable and leave it at that. What do you think of when someone talks about Harvard? Legendary institution, Ivy League, best university in the world. What about a shopping mall for human remains? Because that's what it is said to have become. This story is about the Harvard Medical School. It's embroiled in what's being called the Harvard morgue scandal. The charge is that Harvard was trafficking human body parts. These bodies were donated for science, but parts of 400 such bodies were allegedly sold across the US. Now there's a lawsuit against the college, a class action lawsuit. 19 more families have joined it. Here's a report.
In June this year, some US colleges, including Harvard Medical School, were rocked by morbid allegations. Harvard's morgue was being used as a warehouse. One of the employees working for the school was dealing in human body parts. He was selling the remains of people who had donated their bodies to Harvard for science. They donated to Harvard's Anatomical Gifts program that's used to train doctors. But after the training was completed, these remains were being trafficked by a worker in Harvard's morgue. The Harvard morgue manager's involvement came to light after US authorities busted a nationwide body part trafficking ring. The morgue employee, Cedric Lodge, has been indicted on multiple counts of conspiring to transport and sell human remains. He's been accused along with his wife and several other people. They've allegedly been doing this for years, since 2018. The Harvard morgue manager is accused of supplying body parts till about August 2022. That's 4 years, and reports say almost 400 people's body parts were trafficked. They ended up in macabre places, like a doll shop called Cat's Creepy Creations, which sold dolls made with real human skulls. Some of those skulls allegedly came from the Harvard Medical School's morgue. There are even more horrific details. Human brains sold for $200. Faces that had already been dissected sold for $600. Skin sold to someone looking to tan it and make leather. It's disgusting and disrespectful to the donors and their families. The donors were people who decided to donate their bodies to science, to make one last difference in the world. These donations are essential for medical studies. Aspiring doctors and dentists need to study them to better understand the human body. And many donate their bodies to help train a new generation of medical professionals. But there's an implicit understanding people have when donating their bodies, that the remains will be treated with respect. That once the studies are over, they will be turned to ashes and returned to the families. It's a solemn oath that Harvard seems to have violated. And now the college is being sued for this. 19 more families have joined a class action lawsuit against Harvard. The lawsuit alleges that Harvard abandoned the remains in a facility that was a place of freakish desecration where, according to the indictments, criminals were allowed to roam and pick over loved ones' remains for bits like trinkets at a flea market. That's what the lawsuit says. Harvard denies the charges and has not spoken much about the case, saying they do not comment on ongoing investigations. The college has issued an apology, and it has called the morgue employees' actions an abhorrent betrayal. But other than that, the college has maintained its silence. There are multiple ongoing lawsuits. Many families have come out to demand accountability from Harvard. While the Harvard Medical School is not directly involved in the trafficking, it is being sued under a law which says an employer is responsible for illegal activity at the workplace. If the college is found guilty, it may provide a measure of peace to the distraught families. But the whole Harvard morgue scandal is a wake-up call. Universities need to ensure this kind of thing can never happen again, especially in places like Harvard. The reputation it has built over the years cannot be a shield to paper over such cracks.
Slow and steady wins the race. It's a famous proverb. It's probably true, unless, of course, you're talking about athletics. That's one arena where being slow doesn't help. Recently, the world saw this in action, the slug-paced kind, thanks to a Somali runner. The Summer World University Games were held in China this week. The competition included a 100-meter dash. Now, a clip of that race has gone viral, and this sprinter from Somalia, Nasra Ali Abukar, is making news all over the world, but for all the wrong reasons. See it for yourself. As soon as the starting gun is fired, Abukar falls behind. Within 6 seconds, she's trailing far behind. So far behind that she soon disappears from the camera frame. Eventually, everyone crosses the finish line, but Abukar flounders about 10 seconds behind. She's at about half the speed of her closest competitor, and even though she finishes dead last, she does a little skip in the air. Full marks for confidence, we say. She looked pleased with herself. But the spectators did not share this feeling. And now this video is making rounds on social media. There's disbelief, ridicule, and anger. Abukar has drawn harsh criticism. Her performance has triggered a number of questions. Why was she representing Somalia? Is she even an athlete? Who approved her participation? Somalians can't help but feel a twinge of betrayal. They say it reflects poorly on their country, and they're not wrong. It's not just about the embarrassingly slow run, though. Abukar has stirred a controversy in Somalia for another reason, too. She gave no evidence of any background in elite athletics. Her entry is not even on the World Athletics database. So how did she make it to the team? How did she make it to these games? Nepotism, apparently. Reports say Abukar is the niece of a Somali athletics official. This claim has not been verified so far, but it is making waves across social media, and the rage is palpable. The Somali Athletics Federation has announced an investigation. They will investigate how Abukar found a place on the team. Somalia's sports minister has also publicly apologized about what happened. The chairwoman of the Athletics Federation in the country has been suspended. She's been accused of nepotism. If found guilty, she will be facing legal action. Does this story surprise you? Or does it evoke a sense of cynicism and resignation? Because nepotism is as old as social power games. Nepotism is the abuse of power. Nepo babies are known to flourish in practically every industry. But since we're talking about sports, let's focus on sports. Look at the NBA. It is filled with sons of former players, at least 35 of them, including Steph and Seth Curry, Devin Booker, and Klay Thompson. Bronny James is also likely to declare for NBA draft next year. He's the son of this generation's basketball GOAT, LeBron James. Now, success in a sport does not require a parent who played it too, which is obviously true, but it sure does help, both in terms of nature and nurture. Children of sports veterans grow up thinking and talking about the sport. They see it play out in front of them. And it's not surprising that they would want to be part of it. It's also not shocking that their parents would want to train them. They have an innate sense of what the child needs, both on and off the field. That's a big differentiator, but not the problem. The problem arises when such a privilege is taken advantage of, when Nepo babies get a leg up, no matter their skills, or when they unfairly benefit from industry connections. Many call Sharif O'Neal a clear example of this. He is the son of Shaquille O'Neal, one of the greatest NBA players. Sharif failed to make the draft this past summer, but anyway ended up getting a six-figure deal with the G League. What is this if not nepotism? Becoming an athlete means laying it all out on the field. It all comes down to your skills as a sports person. Nepotism will only take you so far. Now, Abukar may have sprinted up the rungs thanks to family connections, but she also ran straight into controversy. A big example of nepotism going wrong. And not just a trending Somalian video, but also a lesson for many. After all, relatives can only do so much for your career. A new scandal has taken over China. And trust me, we could barely believe it. Bad puns aside, it all started with a viral video. It showed a sun bear standing on its hind legs in a Chinese zoo. Sounds normal, right? But the internet was not so sure. Netizens had just one question. Is that a bear or a human in a bear costume? Now the zoo, the Hangzhou Zoo, was quick to clarify. They said all their bears were, well, just bears. But the internet is still divided. In fact, many are flocking to this Chinese zoo to see it for themselves. Our next report tells you about this debate and why it is getting a little unbearable.
It's not a grizzly bear, it's not a dog, and it's definitely not a human dressed in a costume. Meet Angela.
Hello! Hello!
She's a 4-year-old Malayan sun bear, a species known for the golden patches of fur on their chests. Angela was leading a peaceful existence, waving at tourists, eating bounties of cucumbers and carrots. But now she has become an internet sensation. In fact, Angela finds herself in the middle of an intense debate, a debate that questions her very existence. It started with this viral video right here. The video showed a sun bear standing on its hind legs. This was in the Hangzhou Zoo in China. Of course, the internet was shocked. They were befuddled by this weird human-like behavior and asked whether the bear was an imposter. Is Angela offended by this comment? Well, no. Offense is the strong suit of only humans. So Angela went on with her peaceful life. But the Hangzhou Zoo could not. They had to issue a statement dispelling all these rumors. The zoo said Angela was in fact a bear, and she wasn't looking for a human substitute anytime soon. But the internet is still not convinced. People are flocking to the Hangzhou Zoo only to check one thing. Is Angela really a bear? Or is it just a guy in a fur suit? The number of daily visitors to the zoo has gone up by 30%. They are visiting, sometimes from different parts of China, all to see Angela talk about being a local celebrity. But Angela's fame isn't just restricted to China. She has become so famous, or should I say infamous, that even a UK zoo waded into the debate. It uploaded a picture of one of its sun bears called Kyra and talked about the human-like behavior of the species. Sun bears are a unique species. They are half the size of an American black bear, about 4 to 5 feet. And yes, they do have human-like behavior. Like standing on their feet or waving. Does that make them a human in a fursuit? Absolutely not. But is the internet convinced? Well, barely for now.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with the United States. A robbery attempt went horribly wrong here. A masked man tried to steal from a grocery store, but the store owner caught hold of him and, well, went to town with a beating. In Michigan, a couple rescued people from a burning boat seconds before it exploded. In Turkey, the military detonated artillery shells found underwater off the Black Sea coast. And finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1960, the West African nation of Niger gained full independence from France. The French began colonizing Niger in the 1890s. It was not easy, though. People of all ethnicities united to resist and fight back. After 2 decades of intense fighting, Niger came under the French rule in 1922. It was one of the last African countries to be colonized by the Europeans. We're leaving you with that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Ain't nothing you can do, man, until police come in. Can I get a switch? Let me get a switch. Don't do that, man. Don't do that. Get off the boat.
Get off the boat.
It's gonna blow. You guys want to jump out right
Jump
now?
out right now.
Get away from me.
Get away. Get away.